And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire you whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Well, good evening and welcome to the very last edition of the Guerilla Roundup for 2023 from the fifth day of the fifth test at the Oval. I'm really pleased today. We've got a special crew with us today because we not only have our great leader, Guerilla Hendo, but we also have Steve, aka the Light Roller, wearing a very nice piece of gear, I might say. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, actually, Hendo, can you show off your gear as well?
I'm presuming in my t-shirt. The Ben folks missing action, and of course, as we were saying, we were literally just saying before Besto took that great catch off Mitchell Marsh. We were just saying what a terrible wicketkeeper he was, but
yeah.
course, you know,
oh well.
Sure, as we go through that.
These things go full circle. Okay, today Australia started at 135 for no wicket, chasing a total of 384 to win the match. And things didn't go according to plan for Australia. The batsmen out today were David Warner for 60, Usman Khawaja for 72, Marnus Labuschagne for 13, Steve Smith for 54, Travis Head 43, Mitchell Marsh 6, Alex Carey 28, Mitchell Starc for a duck, Pat Cummins for 9, Todd Murphy for 18, and Hazelwood was 4 not out. Australia were all out for 334, with the result that England won by 49 runs. I should say that at lunchtime it started to rain. We didn't get back on after the rain until 20 past 4, so there was a big break in the day, and I think a big break in the session, in the concentration probably for Australia in all of that. But for bowling, Jimmy still didn't take a wicket. Chris Wokes bowled beautifully, had 4 for 50. Moeen Ali bowled reasonably well, had 3 for 76. Joe Root didn't get a wicket. Mark Wood had 1 for 34. But the taker of the last 2 wickets, most appropriately, the man who finished his batting career with England with a 6, was Stuart Broad, who ended up with 2 for 62. So the Ashes end up being shared 2 games each with 1 draw. And I don't know if Honour is satisfied, but I'd love to know what you guys feel about today's play, the result, and the series result as well. Hendo, you go.
I'll if you like. I mean, I think Honour is satisfied. I said this morning at the outset that I thought it would be really harsh on England if Australia did win today and take a 3-1 out of it, which of course was your prediction, wasn't it, at the beginning of the series, Messi? I thought maybe 2 for England would perhaps flatter them a small amount, but I don't know. They've done it. They got it back to 2-2. They came back from 2-0 down. People will say they probably should have won at Edgbaston, and they had a chance to win at Lords. I don't think the chance they had at Lords was anything like as great as it's been made out. It was really down to Ben Stokes' righteous indignation and anger over the Johnny Bairstow decision, where he went completely Burko. That's what's really got England close or close-ish. I think, yeah, you know, this whole thing of the Ashes, if you've got the Ashes, you keep them. I don't have a problem with that, really. I know that various writers have been chatting about it. I think what we've seen is some brilliant cricket in contrasting styles. We've seen some fantastic individual performances. And the only shame is perhaps that there isn't another test to come or another 2 tests to come, because it's been, perfect cricket. We look back over Ashes series of recent vintage, and we've had a lot of games. We've had series that have been close sometimes, but a lot of games have been very one-sided. But throughout this series, it's twisted one way and twisted back the other. So I think it's just been a fantastic series, and it's just a shame that the test summer comes to such an abrupt and early end.
Absolutely. We've covered 8 tests of various sorts in 2 months, and now there's nothing that England will be playing a test match in until next year. Crazy.
Yeah.
So, Steve, what about your feelings? Firstly, about today, and your experience in the green room, of course, is important to share. Whatever is not under the cone of silence that's been agreed to, but
Yes, no, I've been warned about that. I think today, I'm actually quite amazed how Australia collapsed. This is not something we're used to, certainly not in Australia or even in England. So I genuinely thought Australia were probably slight favourites coming into the day, because really they only needed 250 runs. It was just under, wasn't it? And still 10 wickets. So I think, I'm not a betting man. If I'd been a betting man, I would have favoured Australia. I was quite amazed when Biz still said Australia were favourites for so long. So I think that's the thing that amazed me most. I thought Australia would have stuck to their task, because they really only needed to draw as well. And I know that's easier said than done, but certainly my money would have been on Australia winning, possibly drawing. But I've been wrong about this sort of thing many times. Watching and going on to this series. The series has been amazing. I've loved it. Absolutely every session has been fought so close over, and it's probably been the best series since 2005, comfortably. In terms of both teams were in it all the way.
Well, I understand that the Association of Statisticians have a measure of what constitutes a close test match. I think it's less than 50 runs or 3 wickets or less. And before this match, it was the closest series ever already, from 3 close test matches. We've now got 4 close test matches out of 5. That's quite extraordinary. I feel just really lucky to have been so engrossed in the whole thing. It's been wonderful to be part of.
Yes. I did have the pleasure of going to Old Trafford as well, and I was only there for the first 3 days, which is probably the right 3 days to go for.
Yes, absolutely.
It was a distinct turning of the tide. I think from Headingley, of course. I think England were really on top of that game. I don't think Australia were out of it. I think a lot of people are saying England would have won easily. I don't take that ever when it comes to Australia. But I think there was definitely a change of the tide. And today, particularly how Australia kind of buckled under the pressure, I thought have got something here. And I'm very pleased for Stokesy and McCullum as well. Because I think if England went down, there would have been a lot more questions asked. And we've all watched, we all know that England are such a better side since Stokes has come in and McCullum. And
Absolutely.
I think I'd like to see a lot more of this brand of cricket. I mean, I don't understand it either. I mean, I think I'm an old hat like Hendo. I'm tearing my hair out when they're trying to ping the ball. Everybody's on the boundary and they're trying to ping the ball over the top of it. I don't understand that. I genuinely do not understand that. But of course, we have refined that a little bit as we've got through the series, because they weren't quite as clear. But they clearly wanted to prove a point in the first 2 games. They just didn't quite come off. And Ben Stokes does say it's about execution, which is fair enough. But I think England, could have perhaps got more out of it. So a draw, I think, is a fair result.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. One of the interesting things to me is that, I mean, basically cricket captains and coaches lie when they're in press conferences. I recall after the first one, either Stokes or McCullum saying what a good job Johnny Bairstow had done. And everybody thought, well, nobody's going to believe anything you say if you say that sort of shit. But the difference between them and politicians who lie is they've actually learned from what went wrong, and they improved their game significantly. So by the time they got to Headingley, they weren't making the same sorts of mistakes. So obviously, obviously there's going to be mistakes of all sorts, but their catching got better, their no ball bowling got better, and I think their field placing on the whole got better. You said about Australia, the turning of the tide. For me, it actually happened earlier than Headingley. It started happening when Nathan Lyon got injured. It was like they lost a talisman. And there was something in the structure of Australia that was being heavily dependent around that core group that really included Lyon, and they were discombobulated by that. So it changed it. Australia's middle order were really disappointing throughout the series. I think, with some individual exceptions. There were centuries from Smith, Labuschagne, Marsh, and did Head get one earlier? I can't remember. But in terms of consistency, it wasn't there. So I don't think they played their A game at all. And I think England made hay out of that, and were unlucky not to be ahead, because they made, as you said so often, Nando, mistakes at crucial moments. I'd be interested to know who each of you would nominate as your player of the series for each side.
It's really hard. I mean, because I think you talk about the turning of the tide at Headingley and then into at Old Trafford. You've also got to look at the fact that Wokes and Wood didn't come in till the third test.
Yep.
And they have made an enormous difference. It looked today as if Wood was just sort of hanging together by splinters, to be honest. But and he was really, down to 83, 84 miles an hour in that last section before lunch. But Wokes has been brilliant. I mean, we've talked about the fact that he doesn't really mind if he doesn't go and play in away series, as long as he can play in England. And we've needed him because, Jimmy Anderson just didn't fire for one reason or another. Maybe it was the pitches. Maybe he's, not quite the bowler he was. But he did manage at times to sort of be that bowler that kept the runs down. Today he was actually quite expensive. At one point he was going at 4 runs and over. He just couldn't seem to get the ball to swing for him, really. And sort of 79, 81 miles an hour, it wasn't going off relatively benign pitches quickly enough for him to take advantage. I mean, Broad, brilliant. I was actually sitting down last week to write some sort of appraisals of all the guys in this series. And, Stuart Broad had been written off several times. And he's come back and he's played in every test this summer. And he's bowled brilliantly. I'm not sure whether it's him or Mitchell Stark who finally ended up as the leading wicket taker in the series. But he's bowled brilliantly. I mean, almost in any other time, I would think Stuart Broad would be the man of the series for England. But I have to give it to Ben Stokes because he's played some important innings. He's limped his way, through a whole series with back-to-back tests coming, one on top of the other. And he's taken on responsibility. He moved up to number 3 when Moeen was injured in this test, and he's played some quite remarkable cricket at times as well. That only he really can play. And so, although he hasn't contributed as much with the ball as you would have hoped, he's marshaled the troops, pretty fantastically. I haven't always agreed with some of the decisions he's made, but he's certainly shown a lot more proactiveness than, say, someone like Cummins. I don't think Pat Cummins is necessarily captain well. I think Pat Cummins is a great player from leading from the front and leading by example. Tactically, I'm not sure. Although, when someone's playing like Stokes was playing at Lord's, or that Roy was playing at Old Trafford, I thought any captain's brain is going to be scrambled by that, and it's very difficult to keep control. So my man of the series for England has to be Ben Stokes.
And you, Steve?
Yeah, I think I would go for Chris Broad, actually. And
Chris Broad. Wow, that's a remarkable. I don't want to come back.
I was thinking about is that actually before the games came in, we were expecting him to be a bit part player, weren't we? That he wasn't going to play all 5 tests.
Yeah, there was
so much talk about him and Anderson, and they did rest Anderson, but I don't think they could keep him out. He was so competitive, and he led the bowling absolutely beautifully. So I'd go with Stuart Broad.
Stuart Broad. Oh, that one, the youngster.
I mean, for Australia, I would have to say, it's a really tricky one. It's possibly between Usman Khawaja and Pat Cummins. I think there have been times when Pat Cummins bowled brilliantly. I remember the wickets he got of Pope in the first test, I think it was. And even when he hasn't taken wickets, he's bowled well. He's always looked threatening. And as I say, I think he leads from the front. I mean, he got Australia over the line in that first test. It's been... he's playing against Bazball for the first time. Other teams have come unstuck against it, and their argument was that we're going to be the team that stops them in their tracks. And they did for the first couple of tests to a certain extent. Maybe some of that was down to England's sort of over eagerness, but I think Pat Cummins has performed pretty well with bat and ball in this series.
Yeah.
And Usman Khawaja, a man who came in, averaging 19 in England, has kind of laid that bogey to rest, hasn't he? Because he's batted super well. Yeah. Some people will say he was a bit slow at times, but he's kind of been the glue. He's been the glue for Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's kept them together. So I would think I'd probably share man of the series for Australia between Pat Cummins and Usman Khawaja.
Okay. And what about you, Steve?
Yeah, no, I think I'd get Khawaja as well. And it's kind of a bit of an easy thing to say, the guy who scores the most runs. Yeah. And the other one who kind of appears on that is probably Travis Head. I think he's done quite well.
He sort of fell off a bit of a cliff, though, didn't he?
He is, but when you compare the contributions from Labuschagne and Smith, Travis Head from the middle, it did actually keep things going.
And I suppose if you're talking about disappointments, Marnus Labuschagne, came with a great reputation. Seen him. I mean, he did get that 100 at Old Trafford, but he didn't follow it through, did he? I mean, he went completely back into his shell in this Test match, and that's really to the advantage.
And Cameron Green was a big disappointment too, really.
Yeah, so totally. Yes. I mean, it's only his first tour over here. He's got plenty of time to prove.
I thought he did quite well with the ball, Cameron Green. No, that extra height, I think, did trouble a lot of English batsmen.
Yeah, but he still didn't take many wickets.
No.
But then he was bowling. He kind of was instructed to bowl to a certain plan.
Yes,
away from the wicket and very short, really, and so that perhaps didn't suit him. Particularly well. But
well, I would have gone with Stokes for England. I think just because of the influence of the man in so many ways, and that leadership is amazing. The impact it has, and I would have gone with Cummings for Australia. Simply, I'm not. I mean, I know he had a couple of really bad days at Old Trafford in the field, but I actually think some of his captaincy was very good, and his bowling was just so amazing, and his batting. I mean, for a captain to come in and bat like that in really crunch situations, which he did in the first innings here and in Edgbaston, in really tight times, was really good. So I would have nominated him. And I notice, I'm just looking at Crick Info, between us we have selected 6 players, I think, altogether as possible players of the series, none of whom have been nominated by the panel. The players of the series officially are Chris Woakes and Mitchell Starc. So there you go.
Really?
Well, I mean, you can make a case, absolutely make a case for Chris Woakes. He's bowled really well in his Test, and he's bowled well. He got England over the line with the bat as well, didn't he, at Headingley? So, I mean, you can absolutely make a case for him. But I think, in general, I'm not sure England can do this without Stokes. I mean, he is the man who gives them the belief, I think. And,
absolutely.
And he will, he'll put himself on the line. I mean, he was... we thought it was a kind of turning point today, didn't we, when Steve Smith got away with that catch that he should have taken and dropped. And he knew he'd let the team down there. And maybe it was England's good fortune that they were then off for 2.5 hours, what with lunch and the rain, and that gave them a chance to reset and forget about that and come back. And of course, Woakes getting the wicket of Steve Smith. But I certainly thought when that happened, you felt it was one of those turning moments in the game that might turn out to be crucial, and it might go all the way and see Australia across the line. So he's been able to put that disappointment behind, bring us England back out again, force that collapse from Australia when Moeen Ali and Woakes were bowling so well, and I think he and McCullum they fully deserve. No one else does. They fully deserve the 2-all result.
Indeed. So that's brought us to the end of an amazing series, a time for where we can recover for a while. We'll miss the cricket, but we'll miss the Guerilla community as much as anything else. Our Guerilla for today has in fact to be used, Steve, like rollers, seeing as you have actually been initiated into the various things that go on in the green room that you will never be able to talk about. I mean, it's a pity, but part of your life is now kept in secret.
I'm secrecy. Although there is one thing I would like to give away, and that is Hendo to a friend
I do rant.
outside of the commentary.
I do. I rant everywhere.
It's such a waste. It's such a waste, isn't it? You should have recorded it, Steve.
You know, that scream of "Where's the third man?" You know,
It's never dull in the green room, I can tell you that.
No.
Now, I'm going to do something a little different. Rather than nominate a tweeter of the day, I just want to nominate all of our tweeters, our YouTubers, our supporters, the silent ones who don't even say anything, because it's grown and grown and grown during this series to the extent that we've just had wonderful support from so many of you. And I just want to say, on behalf of all of us at Guerilla Cricket, it's heartwarming to be part of a community where you obviously enjoy what's going on. We enjoy having the feedback with you, and it's what makes it worthwhile. Certainly for me, I suspect for Hendo as well, even though he would like it if there was some money in the end. But it's a very, very satisfying enterprise, despite all the frustrations that come. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being part of that.
Yeah, and it was really great to see, so many people. When it does get exciting, people pile in on YouTube, especially, and that's what gives you a lift, really, isn't it? It's that building of a climax and seeing these people coming from disparate areas switching onto YouTube. It's like the old days where the grounds were near the city centres, and people would get wind of something happening and they'd all rush down to the ground. Yeah, so it's a kind of virtual example of that, and. That is, I suppose that's what keeps us going. I guess the other thing is to say is that, keep supporting us, because, we really believe in this project. We think we've got some great commentators. We've got some very funny listeners, funny, peculiar, as well as funny. And, we just want more people to come and enjoy it. And I think we have a really good product, and hopefully people out there will begin to realise that.
Let's certainly hope so. Finally, as ever, if you would like to support us financially, you can go to our webpage at guerillacricket.com. You can choose there to go to Patreon to support us on a regular basis. Or if you want to make a one-off contribution, there is also a PayPal link there, where if you just want to inject a little cash to keep us going right now, you can do it that way as well. Please like and share this video, add any comments below, and if you would like a discount on Ponting wines, 15%, there's a link below for you to click on with code GCAshes2023, which will give you a discount on those delicious wines. This is the last roundup for this year, because we won't be doing roundups on a daily basis from the white ball cricket, but we will be back on the 31st of August. I was going to say at 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. my time. That will be 6 p.m. your time. It'll actually be the 30th of August in that case, for the first T20 between England and New Zealand from Chesterfield Street. So you've only got another 30 odd days to wait until we're back in that. Keep your eyes open. There will be some podcasts, and for patrons, of course, the Bishop and the Bear and the Smacksman will be out there for you. But most of all, just take care, share the word, and thank you for being with us. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, Hendo.
Bessie.
My pleasure.
We'll see you soon.
Take care.
Good night.
And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what